Hello guys and welcome back to another video of Architects 3DP.
This is the 13th episode of the Build the Best DIY 3D printer series. In the last episode, we assembled and installed the LCD panel assembly to the 3D printer build. In today's video, we are going to prepare and assemble the power supply, getting at the end of the video this nice result. Believe it or not, the power supply preparation is not an easy process, since we have to prepare all the cables and we need to do it properly. Remember to pay attention to the position of the cables during the video.
Now I'm going to show you the components that we'll need to build this part of the printer. But before starting, be sure to subscribe and to ring that bell to be notified when cool stuff is uploaded. If you do it, you will help me creating new content and growing the channel to reach more special viewers like you. Alright, so the first part that we'll need to start with the build of this episode are the next.
The modified power supply cover, a power switch, a power socket with a fuse, and some resistant cable. We'll also need a lighter, an electric welder, some tin, some heat shrink tubing, 2x12mm M3 bolts, and 2 M3 hex nuts. Alright, so the first we need to do is to pick up the components I just announced. And we are going to weld the cables to the connector as you can see on this sketch. We'll weld a 15cm portion to this connector, then another 15cm segment to this other connector, and finally to this connector, we're going to connect a 10cm segment that we will connect here in the power switch. And from the other pin, we'll weld a 15cm cable that will go up with the others. So once said, we're going to start as always peeling the cables a distance from 1 to 1.5 centimeters. I'm going to start with the 10cm and 15cm portions that I'm going to weld to the power switch. You can start from whatever you want. So once the cable is peeled, I'm going to insert a fragment of heat shrink tubing that we'll use later to cover the welding in the connector. Once the heat shrink tubing is inserted in place, we're going to insert the cables through the holes in the pins of the plug and roll them, what will keep them in place. Once in, we're going to use some tin and our electric welder to weld them in place like so. You can do it in each of the 5 pins of the 2 devices. Is then when we are going to slide the heat shrink tubing covering the union we just welded. We'll insert a thicker portion if we need to, so that way we'll avoid any possible contact what could kill our 3D printer electronics. We'll repeat the same process in the other pins, and once we have all of them welded in place, we're going to insert the power switch and the power socket into the 3D printed power supply cover. So first, we'll insert the power switch and then the power socket. Once done, we'll use the 2 12mm M3 bolts and 2 M3N hex nuts to keep the power socket in place, and here we have it. These 3 cables will be connected later to the power supply of the 3D printer, and we'll need to run 4 more that will go from the power supply to the motherboard of the 3D printer. These 4 cables will come out of the power supply cover through a hole here at the bottom of the power supply cover. A hole that I did not make in this version of this video, but I later added to the STL file. I will upload as always for you, and you will find linked down in the description. Since I didn't have the hole in the 3D printed piece of the video, I'm gonna quickly make it using a drill. But I repeat, this is the step that you won't need to do. That's how I make my designs, improving the models in a trial and error. So once we have the power supply cover with the necessary holes, we'll finally just need to grab our power supply. We'll insert the power supply cover right here in this position. But before we need to connect all the cables, and for that, we'll put the cover away and we are going to start unscrewing all the bolts that the power supply has. Since our power supply has 3 exits, we're going to leave 1 positive and 1 negative bolts inserted, since we won't use them. Actually, I did use them later when I made my 3D printer lighting solution, that you can see in this video clicking here in the top right corner. Alright, so back to the power supply, we are going to install first the 3 cables that we just welded and are coming out of the power supply and switch. You just have to connect them, matching the cables with the same labels in the socket and in the power supply itself. Once we insert each of the cable ends, we will screw the bolts, what will keep them in place and prevent them from coming out. We're gonna make a quick fit test, and yes, it fits perfectly. Now we're going to continue, as you can imagine, connecting the COM and V+ cables. For them I'm gonna use a thicker cable, but you don't need to. You will be perfectly fine if you use a cable as thick as the ones we used before. We will use different colors to be sure which cable is which and not messing up everything later, and I recommend you to do the same if you can. So once all of them are screwed in place, I will need to pass them through this hole we just made right here. But one more time, you won't need to do it since it's already made in the 3D model. At this point, we will carefully insert the power supply in place, aligning the holes of the 3D printed cover with the holes of the power supply. As you can see, it fits perfectly, so now we'll use a couple 12mm M3 bolts to fix the assembly. 1 and 2. Alright, so here we have the power supply completely assembled and ready to install in the next episode. Finally, I'm going to make, as always, a recap of all the components we used for this build. For the 3D printed parts, we'll need the modified power supply cover. For specific hardware, we'll also need a power switch, a power socket with a fuse, some resistant cables, and the power supply. For regular hardware, we'll need some tin, some heat shrink tubing, 2x12mm M3 bolts, and 2 M3 hex nuts. And finally, for tools, we'll need a lighter and an electric welder.
Okay guys, so that has been everything for this short video. Remember that down below in the description of the video, you will find all the links to download the modified STL files that we needed for this video, as well as the links to buy all the necessary components from Amazon through our affiliate links. If you still don't have a 3D printer to print all the 3D printer parts yourself, you can contact me by email at architects3dp@gmail.com and I will try to find you a solution. So be sure to subscribe and to ring that bell to be notified when cool stuff is uploaded. Hit the like button if you like the video, leave a comment, and share this episode so more people will be able to learn with the project. Finally, I just wanted to give a special thanks to all of you, and especially to our Patreon supporters for continuing to make this channel possible. If you want to join them and support the channel as well, getting nice rewards and making me super happy, you can do it navigating to patreon.com/architects3dp or clicking here in the top right corner. Okay guys, so as always, see you in the next video.